We're going to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
No pressure. Okay, good.
I'm not exactly sure what we're talking about yet. But yes, it's operations related. Probably commercializing.
Examples of pains, struggles.
Sure, just not specificities, because they're obviously...
Yeah, protected.
Yeah. And our legal team's sitting behind you, so we have to be careful.
All right. But do they have signs like, do not talk about that?
We have no seat for Ashley when she decides to show up. Wait, just put one over there. No, because we can't have an empty one in the middle. Put it on the side of Melania. We have a fifth member who's missing.
Caught in the crowd out there.
No, she went. I don't think so either. Her. I don't know if it's an infant or a toddler, but is back at the hotel. And so, what's the line of definition? Perhaps. When are we starting? We can? Okay. Hi. Oh, is this strong enough?
Just right here.
Okay.
Right there.
Okay, fine. Great. Hi, guys. So we know most of you in the audience, so thanks for showing up to support us. I'm holding a microphone because I've asked most of my team up here to join me. We're Siddhi Shot. We are a firm that commercializes plant-based companies. From conceptualization to commercialization, strategy, logistics, fulfillment. So many people think about commercializing product and don't think about what happens once a product gets down a line and what you actually have to do to protect that product in the meantime, and then how you build a business around a product that gets commercialized. So we've partnered a lot with mission-based investment firms in the industry who make seed and Series A investments, and they've been kind enough to think that our team here and some folks back at home are skilled enough to commercialize product and support their businesses. So I'm Melissa. This is Doug. Doug's our VP of Manufacturing. That's Melania, who's our Director of Ops. This is David, who's our VP of Business Strategy. And we have several more back at home, and Ashley, who may or may not be wandering in at any point now. So I really don't have anything planned to talk about specifically. I was sold on the fact that this is more of a round table than a seated discussion, and clearly we created a panel. But I think it's important to talk through some of the challenges that people face when they think about product concept, and how you have to work through those challenges, and that the plant-based community is actually a whole lot different than commercializing regular food and beverage. There's really no plant-based manufacturing, for those of you who don't know, no specified place where people can go and say, hi, I'm coming out with, like Carrie, who owns Avid's Butcher. Hi, I'm coming out with a plant-based meat product. Where do I go to make it? You have to figure out how, what machinery, product concept, process, and manufacturers who are going to support doing that, and that's not an easy thing. And then you have to figure out how, essentially, to protect that product through, IP protections, great contracts, confidentiality agreements. There are so many times where people run away with really great ideas or pass them off as their own or private label opportunities. And particularly, I think, in plant-based, where people really want to have a piece of this space. So Doug actually works with most of our brands, commercializing them through a lot of the manufacturers that we've formed some unities with, and finding some new ones. So you actually might be the best person to talk through what some of those challenges are.
Okay. The challenges are, we haven't been doing it for 100 years, like many of the other products that might be going down these manufacturing lines. And under that umbrella, it includes, the materials that are going to be involved with producing these products, maybe not yet being familiar with the best handling and process and sequence when handling these materials that are considered new or different or not familiar yet. And there isn't the demand. I heard someone speaking here today saying 100 billion pounds of meat production in the country and 0.1% that much of plant-based. So the demand isn't there yet, which means we don't command a need for line time, which means we don't always get, we don't have a priority when we come in and say, we really want to get line time in your facility. We're not sure how to run it on your machines yet, and we need to do some R&D together. And they go, yeah, great. Come back and see us when that makes sense, or when you want to rent the place for a month, or no, or just sometimes simply we're not interested. So that's one of the biggest challenges, is just getting to the point where we can roll up our sleeves and start working on things. Then once we do that, the other challenges are around, making it safe, consistent, quality, and then being able to get to the point where we can scale this and have a product that's not just conceptual and not something new, but we're comfortable with, and then we get to focus on the fun parts, like what warehouses are we sending it to and our demand, and I get to hand it over to my colleagues that can work more on fulfillment and distribution. Is that
Sure.
good start?
That's great. So we actually see both our insurance team from FOA and our legal team from GSB in the audience. And I think when you're talking about operations, both of those things are really fundamental pieces for us to do some of our really good work. When I went to look to launch a firm, most of the reason I did it is because there was really bad work out there from folks who knew a little bit about operations, enough to sound important, like they knew what they were talking about, not enough to actually do something. And they were blowing through a lot of the protections that these brands and companies needed to have. And so I think we focus a lot on building the fundamentals and bases for operating. And so I think we've spent a lot of time in crisis management, not in the plant-based community, because there hasn't been enough of that yet. We've spent a lot of it in crisis management in natural food and beverage. And because of that, I think we're attempting to have the plant-based infrastructure built more strongly with great insurance backing, great legal backing, great ingredient sourcing, great manufacturing. One of our projects, I think, just as a group that is really not necessarily a public project or something that we announce we do a lot of, but it's to align with really structured manufacturing operations and folks that are doing, multi-millions and billions of dollars a year, who care about this industry and care about the industry that they produce for simultaneously, but want to hedge their own bet and bring good manufacturing practices to new products instead of just existing product lines. David spends a lot of time, sorry. Something flew in my mouth, so I'm going to pass it to you for a second. And you can talk about financial work with them.
So I'm David, VP of Business Strategy with Siddhi Shot, and I spend a lot of my time focusing in on financial plans, really kind of digging into what the model looks like, channel strategy, pricing, making sure you've got all the costs associated with going to market planned for. And so I think that's where a lot of the pitfalls lie, or where you've got a really great idea, you're trying to make great change, add value back to the category. But as you're working through with Doug and our team on commercialization, are we covering off all the right aspects as it relates to freight, as it relates to trade spend, what's the right pricing for that category, where can we make the greatest impact, and then also understand what that cash need is going to look like to scale and grow the business to whatever ends you're looking for, whether that's, going public or some liquidity event or X, Y, and Z. And so, I think that's where we're able to put an operational lens on kind of the finance and understand and really truly vet out some of those costs so that they don't become fires on the income statement that you're trying to put out while you're scaling the business and trying to grow the business.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Sorry. So, I mean, we're happy to answer any questions. The truth is, if you want to boil down to what we think are probably the most challenging things for plant-based companies, it's how to structure manufacturing and the right partners to select. It's not necessarily knowing what volumes you're coming to market with and how that velocity is going to play out. It's sourcing ingredients, having enough of them, and the right ingredient partners that you can choose that believe in the same ethos that the brand is coming to market with. And it's having enough money, to be honest with you, to get you from conceptualization to commercialization, and then ultimately building a business out of that. And that takes time, it takes patience, it takes investors who care less about making a quick dime and more about how to commercialize something for the long term, how to make it scalable, how to invest CapEx dollars behind the manufacturing entities. Because we've said numerous times up here, there is no plant-based manufacturing. We're having to create it. We're having to buy equipment and putting it on other people's floors and then work out who actually has responsibilities to those equipment, who has line time with them, who has rights over them long term and where they go. And then ultimately who owns these formulations, because you come in to a manufacturer thinking you have a scalable formulation, and then you get on a floor and realize that it all has to change with what's there. And so all of those things should be worked out prior to really jumping in. The problem is most people don't have the knowledge to know what should be worked out and what shouldn't. So I think we're just a facilitator of connectivity and of knowledge, and really trying to accelerate the process, because I'm not sure we've got 20 or 30 years to build these companies, to really make a lot of the change that probably all of us here are looking to do. So we'll answer any questions. That's really what we do, and probably boil down, the challenges that we see the most of.
Have you worked with companies that are bringing brand new ingredients onto the market as of yet, and that had to go through either grass or some sort of regulatory work?
From the ingredient supplier perspective or from the brand perspective?
Have you worked with any brands?
Yeah.
Brought a brand new ingredient through and from small companies to medium size?
We have. One of them downstairs is showing. Their name is Fora. They obviously brought, I guess they weren't the first to commercialize aquafaba because Sir Kensington's used it in a mayo, but they certainly were the first to use it in a format that we see now. And yes, it's a challenge. We're talking small scale manufacturing, how it's sourced, the quality of the product, how it's utilized on a floor, the way it responds to cooking, how much of the ingredient you can use, how it acts with shelf life, because none of that stuff is really determined. That's right. None of this was really, right? So even when we say, great, we got through commercialization, you have to go through the whole shelf life of the product and really do it for a year or two to see the way it really responds to different environments, different conditions. Yeah.
Is aquafaba had to go through grass?
No, but I'm saying, I think that bringing any new product to market with any new ingredient, right, or raw material, you're going to end up with some serious challenges or hurdles, particularly if you're using it as the core of your product line.
Well, that's what I'm doing. Commercializing miraculous containing food products.
Interesting.
So have you ever heard of that?
No, please educate us all on it.
So hi everyone, I'm Alan.
Alan, do you want the microphone?
Sure.
No, but it does for the people watching.
All right. Yeah. So.
Have a seat.
Yeah. Okay.
Have a chair, Alan.
Please.
Sure. I'm Alan. I'm a co-founder and CEO of a company called Miraculix. we are commercializing protein sweeteners. Protein sweeteners are proteins that come from plants that are sweeteners. They're not sugars, fructose, glucose, stevia-sides, mongersides like stevia or monk fruit. It's a brand new category. The benefits of these versus anything else, they have better tastes. They're incredibly powerful. We're talking about 20,000 to 50,000 times sweeter than sugar on a gram by gram basis. Many of them could break down to basic amino acids, no interaction with insulin, diabetes, or anything like that. The thing is, these proteins came from ultra rare fruits, truly from the jungles of Africa or Malaysia or other places around the world. And they've been known for a long time, but no one has actually figured out how to mass produce them or to even go through the regulatory processes and figure out how to make great tasting foods with them. So that's what my company does. We're starting with something called Miraculin. Miraculin is a protein that comes from something called the miracle berry. Yes, the miracle berry. Rare fruit comes from West Africa. It's been used in select restaurants, whereas people would have it and it would transform the flavors of the food they have. For instance, it would turn a little wine into the sweetest sangria imaginable. It would turn a little bit of lemon water into the sweetest lemonade ever. You don't feel the sugar like you would with anything else. It doesn't have any bitter off aftertastes. But one of the big issues is once it binds, it's there for about half hour or so, but you don't taste it unless you have an acidic food with it. So the acids and different flavors activate it. So we're developing food products that take advantage of these properties, and we have to be very strategic. Not all foods work with it, but specifics. So we're having to figure out how to produce it in a large enough way to create products, go through regulatory, FDA, create innovative packaging and ways to using it. And that's sort of our challenge and our process to do it. And everything is trial by error, making many mistakes, figuring out super quickly how to overcome them, and trying to position ourselves correctly.
You're hired.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's what I do.
What challenges specifically with grass have you been faced with?
So the thing is, we have to produce all the raw material, and we have a very high standard. It has to be like very pure in order to go through all the regulatory testing. So you need to have the right people that have experience. You need the right people on the FDA. You need to have the right analytical people, either in-house or out-house, that you could do this, that's trustworthy. You need lawyers to write good MTAs in every single step of the way. We worked with some very large CPG companies who loved our product and wanted to buy tons of it, but said no MTA, and that would basically kill us because then we can't create any more IP on it. So challenges like that, how can you proceed? How can you educate people? How could you convince people? For the last 70 years, I feel that most of the public was sort of sold lies by many aspects of the food industry, where sort of low fat was a lie. I don't know if any of you agree, but that personally was my understanding. Low fat, but about 3 days worth of sugar in the cookie. So pros and cons. So it's hard, and to change people's minds and to make them see it in a very different light is very hard, especially if something that sort of was always considered untrustworthy or something that you want to stay away from. And there's a lot of legitimacy why. It was a lot of shenanigans, I think, done through the legal and the food system and the health system that it sort of didn't help people. And I think we're all going through a revolution now saying, you know, the system, there's too many big issues of it, and we think we could change them. And yeah, that's why I'm here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks, Alan.
All right. You don't want to touch the
Great
mic.
honorary panel, Alan. Back to me. Ashley, do you want to take your seat?
Thanks for warming it.
We created a panel, Rusty. Do you want to join it?
Kitchen Cat. I would love to talk with Kitchen
Any other questions? Yes.
Answer.
You have one or no? Okay. No? Great. That's a good question. That's a great question. And thank you, you're also hired. The truth is, I don't know that we've got a typical engagement. We have a fair amount of companies that are they have an idea, they have a moderately scalable formulation. They are in the mission-based investment community where folks are ready to put money behind them, but they have yet to prove out any sort of manufacturing scalability. So those companies come to us to help structure them through co-manufacturing. I would say we've tended to shy away from the folks who come and say, can you please find a co-manufacturer and then we're good. It's important for us to, I think, build the company with the product. As I suggested, we don't just want to pass along a product, say, see you later, and not help them work through any of the fundamentals. So concept. But you can't have just folks in concept, right? It takes too much hand-holding. There's a lot of time, effort, attention, and structure that happens in that. So we're also attempting to move products through, Series A and Series B. 2 to 5 million in revenue is another bucket for us, where we're literally just day-to-day operators. That's really Ashley's team with Melania and David. We're functioning as fulfillment, inventory managers, demand planning, logistics, management of co-manufacturers, crisis management, innovation, how to put them into a new co-manufacturer. And then the last bucket is companies that are doing beautifully. 25, 35, $50 million that utilize us for our intrinsic, expertise in certain areas, mainly for co-manufacturing support, to be honest with you, how they can get themselves into larger scale manufacturing, better structured environments, COG reductions, things that would make them more investable and more desirable in an exit. So there's really 3 buckets. Cool. I keep getting all these eyes out there, just so you know, for people who are expecting to see me up here, and then they see 5 people, and they're like, what is going on in there? Keep going.
Well, it sounds like, so I'm relatively new to this space, but it seems like there are some consistent issues that some companies are facing, particularly home manufacturers or certain facilities.
Yep.
Are there movements, I know Kitchen Town being one, are there some movements toward creating, you said that you had partnerships.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit, I don't really know exactly what the question is that, but
No. So it's evolving. I don't know that there's any real structured partnerships that exist right now. I think that there are manufacturing conglomerates that are attempting to pair with some of the portfolio VCs or companies like ours who have like products that they can push through their manufacturing structure. There is certainly a lot of talk about plant-based hubs, whether it's in the United States, in Europe, in Asia, and I think that will come about, certainly. It's a matter of who's going to get there first, which type of processing will be there, and what products will be the first to do it. But yeah, there's a lot of talk. I think people are moving in that direction. It just, these things don't happen overnight. Who wants it? That's not a me question.
That's right. What does an engagement with that typically look like if whether or not the ingredients are similar or different? It doesn't seem like there are some very different ingredients going on. How do you begin to address some of these issues of ingredients, particularly given manufacturing is
Well, hold on. You can answer that in 1 second. But let me just say that we're attempting as a firm to not disperse manufacturing. So we have several brands launching in structured manufacturing environments so that I think those synergies and behaviors of product composition or ingredient profiling stay together. So essentially, but there will be multiple of them, right? And who knows if manufacturer A, the first one, is the right manufacturer. They may not be. But the point is, we're at least structuring what can end up fitting together from an ingredient perspective, an allergen perspective, a process perspective, an equipment perspective, and a cold chain or not cold chain perspective. So it's not decentralized. We're attempting to pull it together. We're just in the really early stages of that. But very specific ingredients, I mean, these guys hunt them down.
Yeah.
As a follow-up, can you talk about transparent supply chain and ingredient sourcing and what the challenges of that are with respect to those particular
And when you say transparent supply chain,
Do you mean like clean ingredient labeling? Okay.
conditions are as long as they're growing it and they're processing it all the way through the entire supply chain.
Well, that's a nice meaty question. That was totally unintentional pun, by the way. So I think, kind of going back to your original question, there are a lot of challenges specific to the plant-based space because a lot of the time you have these conventional ingredients that are easy to get, are cheap, perform well, which is why they're sourced at high volumes and you can just get them. But they don't have that clean label. You don't know where they're sourced from. And then you go to look to find these alternative sources, and either they're not readily available, they're not yet available because you don't have a good alternative option, or they're super, super expensive, and then you don't have a viable product because the cost is so prohibitive to produce it to have a finished outcome that is actually really great and that you're happy with and is using these ingredients that work. So I think that's also something that continues to evolve and has to kind of keep pace as you have these new products that are in line with it. But a lot of it is just really digging and a lot of research and getting to know other suppliers and having to be really vigilant about due diligence and getting in there. And sometimes you come across things that seem really great and you have documentation, but that doesn't always align with the actuality of where it comes from. Also, you start to see things that are becoming more stringent again, so like vegan verification. Yeah. So you all probably know like vegan.org. When I went through that process a couple of years ago, it was like there was one person there, you sent an email, they were like, great, I like this list, you're approved, you get the symbol. Now it's like all this vetting, you need documentation, and even for things that clearly come from plants or from a natural source, it's like, no, you need to provide all of this backup information. So I think there are more nuances and complexities to it, but it's just another area that needs to kind of keep pace and evolve and grow. So kind of like our friend Alan was saying, uncharted territory to some degree.
And this is one of the main reasons people will come to us and will work with a brand they're working on the creative, the conception of the idea. Mm-hmm. Our combined experience tells us things like, let's try to future-proof this a little bit. Mm-hmm. If you're not kosher certified or looking for vegan or gluten-free now, we know that on the co-manufacturing side, there could be some conflicts or it would maybe limit the amount of possibilities we have. And we also know that in the first year, how many packaging changes do we anticipate?
More than you
launch?
would ever don't
5.
ever think it's great to get like 1 million impressions of something. Don't do that. You're not going to save on the volume.
So it helps inspire conversations kind of on the intake and setup process of, okay, what do we think we might want down the road besides just volume and target cost and COGS of the product, but also what's going to help give us the best options so that we can run with these larger co-manufacturers or put something on your product packaging down the road that we're not sure that we want, but we want to have that possibility open. Anyone else want on supplies?
Follow up, anyone?
Is there any information that you proactively share so that employees, before they come to hire you, are already kind of meeting kind of a base level of, okay, I've checked X, Y, and Z box on my own. It sounds like there's so much knowledge.
Timing and expectation.
How do you share that?
That would be really helpful. The truth is we can't do that. Everyone's at different stages. And we can ask, oftentimes we ask questions, we get told, no problem, we've got that. That's exactly right, it's already done, you don't even have to price for that because it's already handled. We get them in our system and realize you didn't handle it, it's not handled right, you're so confused by it, we have to unwind it. And so the truth of the matter is, it's really, actually, I think we all just recently decided that we really have to have an engagement period in the beginning where there's really deep dives, because otherwise it's not the entrepreneur's fault. Unless they're a serial entrepreneur in food and beverage, they often don't know what they don't know. And so it's our job to point that out. So questionnaires come in our onboarding process, but I would say it's significantly, it comes significantly later. It's not really, for us, it's based on the people, the product they're launching, the investors behind them, and particularly if we've worked with them before and we know what type of investors they are and how they operate. We tend to do a lot of work with the same groups, which make it easier for us to commercialize. And so, no, it's really just a matter of gut, really, at this point. For sure.
Thanks for all the good questions.
Awesome. Thank you.